All right, good afternoon, everyone. We will call our March 4th work session to order. We have some great discussions from student assignments. So I will kick it off to Ms. Pulliam and to Mr. Caruso. Thank you.
No, go for it.
Okay. So while we know that we feel like we just ran the gauntlet for the 25-26 enrollment planning process, it is time to start thinking about 26-27. So today is just a touch point to get ahead of our public engagement processes, and we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what we're getting ready to do to engage the community in conversations about the enrollment plan, where we learned from last year's process and previous year's processes and how we're responding to those learnings. So again, we're here to talk to you about just the public engagement plan, not the plan itself. We want to highlight how the feedback from past enrollment plans has informed this year's enrollment approach. We just feel like that continuum is really important for the community to hear and see. We want to make sure you are aware of the timeline, and we want to identify the key activities that we're planning this year, as well as see if you have any additional feedback for us to consider from the public engagement plan. We're not asking you to think about the plan itself. We're not there yet, but just how we engage the community. In previous years, we have very much and very clearly heard that our families and community members want a clearer understanding of how their feedback is influencing the planning process. That was very clear for us towards the end of this year's cycle. It's been a little nudge throughout, but we think that this is something we need to do a better job of sharing with the community, is how their impact does impact the planning process. In addition, we heard a lot of positive feedback, particularly this last year, with all the different ways we made available for parents and community members to participate, to learn, and to engage. So we want to keep that tide rolling forward. They also appreciate having multiple ways to be able to share thoughts and ideas and feedback and concerns. And so we want to continue to tap into that sort of leaning. And then, of course, they have been very thoughtful about sharing with us how having more and better access to planning information has been well received, and they'd like even more. So how we're responding, as far as how we're going to help with a clearer understanding, we've been partnering with communications, specifically Crowley Tornell, to help us figure out a better way to share openly and publicly how community feedback has influenced past plans. Last year, you'll recall, we started talking about that towards the end of the cycle. We want to go ahead and highlight that now, early in the process. They also want to have a better understanding of when opportunities are coming up. So we're going to restructure our website as well as our community messages to highlight, here's what you can do now type ideas, versus make you read through it, but just have to figure out how to plug in. And then, of course, we want to make sure that any thoughts or ideas that get captured along the way are easily accessible to families and community members so they can see that progress live versus waiting all the way till September. The other things that we're responding to in terms of keeping up that engagement. So we have talked about how it does take some time and effort and staff and resources, but it's well worth it. So we're going to continue to not only use digital resources like the website and our community messages, but partnering with Brooksy Sturdivant and her work with getting that community group together. We're going to start leveraging that group to get even more communication out. A soft touch into that was being able to participate in Superintendent Taylor's AAA panel today, but we're going to continue to leverage that to get the word out to larger groups so that they can also help us penetrate the community a little bit better. We're also going to continue to expand and have the multiple methods for input. We realize that a single one-stop shop of, let's say, an individual thought exchange or an individual public comment period may not be sufficient, so we're going to continue to have more and different ways to capture those thoughts and ideas. And we're going to piggyback on the success of last year's open house and continue that moving forward. This year, we're only projecting to open one new school, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So it'll be a little bit smaller scale open house. As a reminder, this is our website that's perpetual that we launched last year about this time, and so we're updating that now. We've already got a few updates underway, and then the others will just continue to update the site as new and more updated information is available. This is the best one-stop shop for anybody who's wanting to plug into the process to find out what we're doing, when we're doing it, and what we've already learned and heard. In addition, last year we had great success with a lot of our municipal partners in sharing this link with them, so if they wanted to cross-link it on their sites, because we know sometimes community members don't always understand that school decisions are the board's decision here. Sometimes they think the towns are involved, so we wanted to give them this resource to help redirect those questions. They've been very appreciative. This graphic we shared with you last year, so we just want to point out that this is a full 6-step process each year, and we want to highlight that we're technically still in step 6 of 25-26, so I'll briefly mention that in a moment. But right now, we're getting ready to kind of hit steps 2 and 4. Step 4 is the longest part of the process, the actual development of the enrollment plan, and it overlaps a couple of the others. So you have yet to receive your full update on the capital improvement plan. So once that is finalized and we know what the goals are for the next 7 years, we'll incorporate that into our planning efforts to include renovation projects. The projected crowding, we have just recently released our projected enrollment numbers to our principals so they can start doing their staffing plans. We're going to share with you updates on what we think that's going to look like for our schools next year. What success did we get from our previous assignment plan in relieving crowding in a few areas by opening up a few new schools, and where do we still have work to do? We'll come to you in December with CAP schools, and then we'll talk about step 6 in just a moment. So as a reminder, you saw this a couple of weeks ago from Marcella Rory before she retired. This is her first week of retirement, yay her. And so we got this information from that forecast project. As you can see, each progressive year or successive year, it's becoming increasingly aggressive in terms of how many students we think we're going to need to support over the next 10 years. So that is something that we need to think about. Our geospatial team then helps me take this and turn it into the spatial distribution model so I can figure out not just how many students, but where. And so this is last year's. We're still updating all of our graphics based on this recently released information. So by the time I come back to you in May, this will be updated. But we don't expect it to be largely different, but there might be a few larger arrows in the east as more and more development is coming in that Knightdale, Wendell, Zebulon corridor. Again, now that we have projected enrollment out, we'll get this type of graphic updated. We're actually working with our geospatial team to see if there's a better way to display this information, but to help you visually see which schools are still projected to be crowded at what level, which ones have large complements of trailers, which ones don't, just so that those are parts of our information that we consider as we think about our planning processes for the year. So we'll get those to you soon. Again, by the time we see you in May, we'll have fully updated graphics to describe this projection for you. But just as a placeholder, as a reminder for the coming school year, we're projected to have 162,420 students distributed, as you see on the right, across elementary, middle, and high school, in the 72,000-ish range for elementary schools, 36-ish thousand for middle school, and just over 54,000 for high school. So by any standard, it's a lot of children. We do a great job of serving many, many families. As a reminder, we'll also come to you and talk about what's going on with the capital improvement plan. What we know is that Hilltop Needmore is on track. It's open. It's supporting the swing space for Fuquay Varina Elementary at this time, but we'll be opening it as Hilltop Needmore, similar to what we did with Woods Creek a couple of years ago. So that'll be a new school assignment area that we will need to identify this year. The darker colored circles that you see towards the top and right of the map are just those that are coming online, and we always want to be thoughtful of those as we're making assignment recommendations so that we're not moving families multiple times in short time frames. So this will be updated. I've already been advised that the new Parkside Middle, with the recent change in location, is probably more likely to open in 29-30, but as you have those conversations with the facilities committee, we'll give you updated graphics to support that information. That's why the asterisks are everywhere on this slide, is because we know that everything on this is subject to change based on many factors in the world of construction. But as you can see, this will be the last new elementary school for a while. So we may have other recommendations for you to support crowded or underutilized schools in the coming year, to knowing that those are not coming for a while. So there's where Hilltop Needmore will be located, very near the sort of Binks Road Elementary, Ballantyne. It's kind of in that little space, but we'll be talking about that more as we get closer. Again, not talking about assignment recommendations today. The one thing that we realized after last year's public comment and feedback is that we don't do enough to help families understand how renovation projects, major renovation projects, also impact our assignment recommendations. For example, Balcom Elementary, with the renovated space there, and Fuquay Varina Middle with the renovated space there, and the additional capacity that both of those schools were able to bring online, we have assignment recommendations to take advantage of that capacity. So we want to make sure we're being clear with the community that sometimes renovations might be a promoter of a recommendation for an assignment change to help take advantage of that new capacity. So we'll get these cleared up for you after you've had a chance to talk about these in the facilities committee. And the other thing we really, really wanted to highlight is now is the time to engage. This is the most impactful time for families to engage in the public engagement process because we can really use the thoughts, ideas, lived experiences that they share with us in a very meaningful way as we're developing the plan. So we really want to highlight and encourage that as much as it's a probably 20-step process that we follow to get from today to September, it's really about engage, plug in, participate, reach out, let us know if you want to engage. We're going to push out notifications to expand our outreach, but please, please, please participate as early as you can. I also think the rhythm of having this springtime engagement now being in its third cycle is going to be a little bit more well-known for our community as well. The next is we'll talk with you about what your goals are for the plan and then ultimately bring you a plan. Our board policy is what highlights or sort of drives a lot of the assignment recommendations as well, so we always remind you of that. Board Policy 4150, Section A in particular, with the 4 pillars of student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency driving a lot of the underpinning and guidelines for our teams as we bring recommendations to you. We do have a fully updated video. We won't play it for you today, but if anybody wants to watch it, I've also included the YouTube link at the bottom, but it is on our WCPSS YouTube channel. So this is the one we promised you last year. We've been using it since September, but it does clearly explain how that policy works and how it guides our work. It's just another way to describe how those 4 pillars inform our planning processes. So again, I remind you that this is where we are in the process. We're working on projected crowding. We're also overlapping that with our public engagement processes. And so that's really what we want to, I just can't say it enough. Please engage, please participate. Another improvement that we'll make this year is the public engagement summary report that we put together for you toward the end of last year's cycle. We're going to start building now so that you'll get multiple versions and revisions of that as we go along so people can see all that collected feedback in multiple locations. A formal report as well as the website as well as in any presentations that we do. So there'll be multiple ways for people to access the information that's being shared so they can see if it aligns with their thinking or if they feel like they want to say something different. So those key events will be some regional sessions. This year we're going to do something a little bit different. The last 2 years we've only gone to communities where we knew we were opening a new school in the next year or two. We're still going to do that. So we'll be going to the Hilltop Needmore area to engage those families one more time. We'll start in the Morrisville community to get an early conversation about the new high school because it is scheduled to open in 27-28. So we want to give at least 2 opportunities for families to participate in that discussion. In addition, you'll remember from our conversations, there's some concerns in the northern Raleigh area now that all those schools are kind of built, the Sycamore, Barton Pond, with the Pine Hollow coming online and all of that, that there's some concerns about feeder pattern alignment and cohort continuity. So we're going to go into that community and talk about what are some things you'd like to see as recommendations. We had one that we proposed for you in the initial draft that got pulled out last year because it wasn't quite right. So we want to give the community another opportunity to help guide us in that work. In addition, in the eastern part of the county, those schools are not projected to open for quite some time, but the growth is coming tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and have some early conversations with those communities to see what we need to be thinking about as we make plans for the interim space as well as those new schools coming online. And then, of course, we promised to go back out to the Apex area to talk about middle school feeder pattern alignment with some of the recommendations related to the opening of Pleasant Plains. And so we're going to honor that commitment and go out to that community as well. That'll double dip a little bit because we also have a CAP school out there and an underutilized school, so we'll be engaging the White Oak and Turner Creek communities at the same time, but we'll be heading out that way. And finally, we're going to start engaging the Southeast Raleigh community in an early conversation. We're going to start with a digital format where we're going to ask them their opinions on when we could physically come, like what's a good time. Most of our sessions we host 6 to 7:30 on a Thursday. Is that the right time? So we're going to start with that particular community because the needs are nuanced and different from growth per se by engaging the community. We're going to really rely on those partnerships that Brooksy has been helping us build and in her work, Dr. Sturdivant has been working on, so that we can engage that community, get them fully online, and then use that information to dictate what's the best step forward. As a reminder, you've already approved the CAP schools for the coming school year that are current for this time period moving forward. So this was the step 5 of the 25-26 plan has already been completed. Still too many on that list for my, taste. I'd like to continue to work to get that list even smaller. And then this is where the 25-26 plan is overlapping our work towards 26-27. So Mr. Caruza will be getting together some teams to talk about those additional steps. Okay, we have an assignment plan that dealt with some issues. You made some decisions about capping. Now, there's still some schools that have some issues that can't be solved necessarily with a reassignment or can't necessarily be solved just through capping. So maybe there are some calendar change discussions that might need to happen or some trailer movement, anything to help us deal with underutilized and overutilized schools that there's not an easy assignment solution for. So those conversations will be happening around the same time as ours, and I'll let him speak to that in a future session. And so just as a reminder, this is that I need to probably come up with another graphic that shows that this is like an infinity loop. But essentially, we're finishing up the last of the 25-26 plan and starting the 26-27 plan around the same time. So if your community members are having questions, it is possible they're being engaged on 2 fronts. Not many, most will be one or the other, but there are a handful of communities that might be engaged on both fronts. Again, our favorite website. And then at this time, I would turn it over to the chair of the work session and help us figure out where we go from here, if there's any comments, feedback, or ideas for improvement for our public engagement plan.
Well, thank you, Ms. Pulliam and Mr. Carosa, because this work is ongoing. It's not just once we approve a plan that it stops. It's a year-round loop, so maybe that could be the graphic.
I think we take 2 weeks off.
Yes, maybe it could be a graphic that
Yes.
just shows that we're at step 1 and it goes around. So I'll open up for my colleagues for any questions or feedback that they have at this time. We'll just go around the table. I see Ms. Rice. I'll start with you.
Oh, well, great job. I think this is amazing process that you've done. You've been very thorough in the process in what you guys are trying to do to engage every family in every region. I've even heard you speak about understanding that all of our regions are different and have different needs, and you're literally using your staff, to collaborate to meet the needs of every region in the family. So I think that you're headed in a great direction. I don't have anything to say to add to it. I think that you guys are doing an amazing job, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that, and I'll also say, I appreciate all of the work, seeing the different iterations of how we're engaging families on the front end versus the back end. And it's hard because it doesn't feel real until that student assignment plan drops. And I think that that's a hard thing to communicate to families. Like, we had these pieces, it just feels like, oh, I think I'll be okay, and then the assignment plan comes. So I just appreciate the work that you're doing, and I know that, for our families, it's also really hard to, even if they know something may be coming, still be in that space, so.
If I may address.
Absolutely.
And so I probably should announce, we're not stepping away from any of the engagement activities that we normally do from September to
Right.
November. In fact, we're looking to make a very specific suggestion to improve that process for you as well, and we'll get to that when we get after this conversation.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues, and I certainly appreciate, from a parent standpoint, I certainly appreciate all of the different ways that the efforts that are being made to engage families, and really thinking about all of the other barriers that families and parents face to make sure that their input is taken into consideration feels very genuine.
Ms. Hoffman?
I would just be echoing what they said. I appreciate that you always can really fine tune and put that out there for everybody to understand where to go and how to engage. Thank you.
Well, I guess there's not a lot of feedback to this, but thank you all for the work that you all do. We know that this is not it's a very difficult process trying to fit the unique needs of Wake County with the growth in certain parts of the county that is skyrocketing. So you all do such an amazing job of meeting those needs, and we do know that when we have 162,000 students and growing, our students do not fit in a very unique box, and so we thank you all for that work. So I guess.
So before I leave you,
Yes.
We wanted to share the proposed timeline for this year, and there's one thing I really want to call your attention to, and it's the timing of the public hearing. We heard a lot of feedback this past cycle and in previous cycles that it feels as if the public hearing is too close to the release of the final draft for your review and consideration, and that it doesn't feel like there's a sufficient amount of time to respond to what you're hearing as board members at your public hearing. So while we want to continue with the new cycle that we started last year of early September release to give us a full 6-week window between the first draft or the initial draft and our review of all the feedback that we collect during that time period, that gives us sufficient time to have multiple information sessions and open house. And we would also like for you to consider hosting your public hearing the same day that we come and provide all that feedback to you on October 21st, well in advance of the November presentation, so that if there is anything unique or different that hasn't already been captured by those other types of information sessions, you can hear it early, and we can have sufficient time to provide responses to the comments and feedback prior to you considering the final draft. And that way, it doesn't feel so tight towards the end. Not to say that the community members can't come and sign up to speak, and provide public comment at a regularly scheduled meeting. We just thought that this might be an improvement for you as board and for us as staff to make sure that there really is sufficient amount of time to respond to any of those thoughts, ideas, questions, or concerns.
And I'd like to add, just making you aware of the calendar, the next meeting after October 21st will likely be November 18th, unless you choose to have a meeting on November 4th.
The election day?
Election
Correct.
day, yes. Because we've gotten in the habit of possibly doing them the second and fourth weeks. However, that Tuesday would be Veterans Day. So that wouldn't be a day that you'd probably be meeting. So just making that, aware to you so that you can have that. We really prefer as staff is to finalize on November 18th, because the next weekend would then be the weekend of Thanksgiving, and that did not go over well with families this year when we did it. And it's also hard on staff, because a lot of the stability transfer work that needs to get done that you want us to engage families is really difficult right around the holidays as well, to get it done in a timely manner so that we give them ample time before they leave for winter break.
This is great feedback, and I'm sure if Chair Hegarty is listening, we can take that in consideration, but I do know that's something that we will definitely make sure he's aware of and that we can make it easier on you all. So thank you.
Well, and it's really for families,
Yes,
honestly.
yes. Well, I mean you all.
And I will say, we did add in intentionally the April 15th, May 6th for conversations around calendar and school utilization, so that it's outlined and clear. But that is still a carryover from the previous cycle, but it's what will be coming in the coming months. So hopefully we won't see you for a little while.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you so
Now
much.
we
If you have any questions, we're always here.
Great. So our next topic is our 25-26 instructional calendars with the early colleges, and that will be Mr. Carrozza and Ms. Anderson-Powell.
Simply don't
You have a slide deck?
Not for the,
So what should I
so
go
the
first?
last, let's do the last, multi-track year-round will go last. Let's start with the leadership academies, yeah. So annually, we bring to you the calendars, and Tamani will talk to you about, the guidelines that we have to follow. But each year, we have to get calendars approved for the upcoming school year. What we generally have to do for the early college calendar, so it's the ones that are aligned with the leadership academies, which are aligned with Shaw University. You've got your other schools that are aligned with Wake Tech, and then STEM, which is aligned with North Carolina State University. We can only bring those to you a year in advance because they don't have a long runway where they create their calendar. So we're going to be talking about the 25-26 calendars for your application schools. We'll also be bringing to your attention for the 26-27 recommended calendars for multi-track year-round, which includes track 4 only, modified calendar, and traditional calendar. And I'll ask after we go through this that this is just an information item right now. We will not be voting on the official calendars. We can bring it at the next meeting or the meeting after. But I want to be very clear, please take some time to go through and look through those, because we do have a committee that of community members, staff, principals, teachers, and even some just parents who don't have kids here in Wake County Schools are a part of it. They agree to what we put out here, and I know in the last couple years, we've had some tweaks to the calendars, and we really don't want to keep doing that because we want to try to get the calendar out in a final version so parents can plan at least 18 months in advance for any vacations or whatnot. And so if you could, after this moment, before we bring it back for final approval, please pick it apart. Let us know of some things that you anticipate will be issues or concerns that you may want to change, because we'd rather do it on the front end than on the back end, like we've done in the last 2 years. Okay? And I'll turn it over to Tamani.
Thank you. So let's get started. Let's get started with the early college calendars. These calendars are created by staff at the school in conjunction with staff at their partnering college or university. It really does try to align with the college or university partner. The thing I want you to notice on the Wake STEM early college calendar, there are a couple of days, September 16th and February 17th, that may look a little odd because they're in the middle of the week. Thank you, Susan. Because they're in the middle of the week, but those 2 days are...
I know what those are. I know what those 2 days are.
Well, they are wellness days
They are wellness
sponsored by North Carolina State University. So those are the 2 days that I think when I first looked at the calendar, I was like, why are y'all doing that? And so down at the bottom in the yellow box, it's highlighted so families will know what those maybe 2 odd teacher work days are on the Wake STEM calendar. Other than that, they all start early August. This particular year, they all start on August 6th. They have to still have the 17 teacher work days, 177 student days, the same 11 holidays, and then 10 vacation days as every other staff person. But it's just that their whole calendar starts early to align with their college partner, and then they end earlier. This year, all of them end May 21st.
And just to clarify, the 177 days gives us an opportunity to have some bank time in order to meet the minimum requirement of 1,025 instructional hours.
So I'll entertain any questions about those calendars.
Great. Is there any questions, Mr. Hershey?
So these are all the early college programs?
That's correct.
This is just STEM right now that you're seeing up on the screen.
Oh, okay, then I'll wait.
Oh, okay.
So is there
Do you want me to show the others?
You can show
Is there
the
a particular
others.
one you'd like to see?
No, the Wake Tech one.
Wait, 10, okay.
Yeah. So for people who may be paying attention, that we always ask for calendar flexibility. The Wake Tech ones, we talk about aligning with community colleges. Would this kind of serve as a good example of, hey, we would start earlier, but look how much earlier you would be done, you would be out Memorial Day? This was kind of a relatively good representation of what it might look like with calendar flexibility?
Yeah, so what a lot we hear from other districts, right, that align with their college career promise, their local community colleges, this would be a similar calendar to that, yeah. So starting in August at some point, ending late in May.
So really, it's the same vacation amount of summer. People talk about, don't shorten my summer. It's the same exact amount of time. It's just shifted 2 weeks
A month
up.
earlier. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Pretty
2 to
much.
3 weeks earlier, yeah.
Okay.
You still do 177 days. Now, you could have more flexibility in the middle and have a whole week of fall break. I'm not suggesting
Right.
that. I'm just saying with calendar flexibility, you know, there are different things you could do with that calendar, so it doesn't have to just shift one way.
Sure. Yeah, that calendar flexibility that we use here is often to try to make the first semester equal or close to equal than the second semester, so you don't have, you know, a significant amount of instructional days in the first semester as opposed to the second, because when you're taking different classes in the different semester, it doesn't reduce or expand the instructional time, especially for kids taking AP classes. Thank you.
And I'll see Ms. Caulfield, I just want to say that the reason we do not have calendar flexibility at this current moment is because the state legislators. I just want to make that known because we're not standing in the way of that. We are actually following state legislation that indicates when our calendars can start. So just for those folks who are curious on why we can't make this move, it's higher up than us. Ms. Caulfield?
Yeah, so I have 2 quick questions. If the bill is passed, because I believe there's like 22 22 or 23 days for the calendar alignment. If that passes, will these be adjusted? Will our calendar be adjusted for 25, 26? Or will it be too late and we have to wait till 26, 27?
So that's up to you. Go ahead, Ms. Mann.
Oh, I was going to say, let's cross that bridge if we get to it, because every year, a bunch of them will pass the House and then die in the Senate, so,
But that
Yeah,
would
I
be
wouldn't
your
hold-
call.
yeah.
And at
Okay.
some point, I maybe wouldn't do 25, 26 because schools are beginning to plan.
Yeah.
But you certainly could consider changes to 26, 27 at this time.
Okay. And then my other question, it's not really a question, it's more a comment for those that are listening. If you have our calendar and you have a student who is in dual enrollment, they can finish, right now, they would finish in the first couple of weeks of January, but Wake Tech has already started. So then that student has to now decide which class you're going to go to, because you have another week of school, and then you have your finals, but meanwhile, Wake Tech is already starting, so you're missing good instructional time either way. So it's really more a comment for anybody that's listening, why we actually really, really need the calendar flexibility.
Are there other questions about early college calendars?
Ms. Price, did you have a question?
I think I'll concede. My colleagues have said what I thought and the dates. And the one question I had, I don't think I want to ask about the alignment because I'm going back and forth. So the answer is no.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me. The answer is no. I don't have a question. No.
I'm available if you have questions later. And probably because school staff primarily work on these calendars, because they're the ones that are working with alignment, we could follow up with school staff if there's an alignment question.
Yeah, it was just, it's just one date, but I'll discuss it offline. That's
Okay,
fine.
all right.
Traditional first.
Yes,
No.
let's do modified first.
So easy.
So you have the modified instructional calendar, which again is limited to the schools that are currently on this calendar or those with calendar flexibility because of restart schools. Thank you. So we have 7 schools, I think, that operate on this calendar. Typically, they start at the end of July, go 9 weeks, have a 2-week break, 9 more weeks, 2-week winter break, 9 more weeks, 2-week spring break, 9 more weeks out right at Memorial Day. So they have a 7-week summer, which is required. They have a 7-week summer, and then they start again the end of July. You will see there are some teacher work days. Most of their teacher work days occur during track out, but they do have other teacher work days that they take, which can sometimes align with those on traditional calendar. I'll entertain any questions.
And generally, the calendar, your first quarter, and then you have a break. Second quarter, then you have a break. Third quarter break, and then fourth quarter break. So it's a nice, evenly spaced system of breaks for the children.
Looking around, I don't see any. We can keep going.
Okay, all right. So you do have a new calendar, an updated calendar in Assembly, the multi-track year-round. If you want to access that one, can we do that one next?
I don't have that one.
Okay, so it should be in Assembly if you
It's in
refresh
Assembly.
Assembly.
I did not have a working USB. So multi-track works very much the same way as the modified calendar. Students go 9 weeks and have a 3-week break, approximately 9 weeks and have a 3-week break. Which one am I opening?
I think that's it, version 6 you got there.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you. There we go. And so tracks 1, 2, and 3 begin July 7th. And then track 3 will go 3 weeks and approximately 3 weeks, and they will track out. And when they track out, track 4 students track in. So it's a great building saver because you have children in the building all year long. It is hard on a building, but it is good for kids. And so you'll see that even on the multi-track calendar, there are some school-wide teacher work days. August 21st, November 3rd, which of course is Election Day, April 5th, and then June 30th. So there are some days for those teachers, even across tracks, that they can work together. That for many years was a challenge to have all teachers in the building at the same time for any kind of staff development, but at least these school-wide teacher work days allow all teachers in the building to be there together.
And
This calendar has a 2-week winter break, which is always an exciting thing for year-round schools because they don't always get that. And I think those were the only things that I wanted to point out. Glenn, anything else you want to share?
so this calendar gives us the least amount of flexibility because you have to fit in 177 instructional days, and you're trying to do it over 4 tracks and making sure that each track has an equitable number of days. One thing I just wanted to point out, it looks like in June, and I can't remember if it happens again, beginning of June, you'll see only 2 tracks tracked in. You'll technically have 3 because students can come back for the testing in track 1 on June 1st and 2nd, but you'll have tracks 3 and 4 in the building only. It's not an efficient use of our building. However, because of trying to organize the days of instruction, it's necessary in this particular case. And that's just because of when we start school on a certain day and have to end by a certain day, it just causes some of those. So that will be one thing that you'll see and probably hear from families.
So the 2 light blue days at the end that Glenn just referenced, June 1st and 2nd, and then June, gosh, it's even small for me, 28th and 29th. Our flex days, we use bank time for those days, so only students who are retesting will be in the building on those days.
And those retest days are required by the state, correct?
So I'll let somebody else, I don't do
Maybe.
corrections. I'll let somebody else speak to
All right.
that. The retest days.
They're not required, but we choose to do them.
Okay.
Right. But it's, and they need to be done before the end of the year, so this is the only way that year-round can really approach this, is to use this bank time, because their last day is often the last day of June.
Yeah.
Another day I wanted to bring to your attention, I think it's October 5th. You have track 4 coming in for one last day on a Monday. I know parents aren't going to be excited about coming in for one day and then tracking out. However, again, because of the way the school year starts and when it ends, it's very difficult to not have that happen. So I'm sure we'll get some feedback about that.
Yes.
Was there not a way to incorporate that one day into one of the teacher work days?
So it's an instructional, go ahead.
But no, so typically, it is an instructional day, and the challenge comes where you have multi-track year-round schools that are really big, numerically big, and there's just not room for other kids to come in. And if teachers are working, they need a place to work. It's a real challenge doing this calendar, because anything you do then dominoes everything else. So if I look at adding, like trying to fix that, we call it a hanging day, because it's hanging there. Trying to fix a hanging day then impacts every other track, and it just becomes a challenge. Okay, so last but not least, the traditional calendar. Thank you, Ms. Pulliam, for being So the traditional calendar is where the state law really impacts the things that we can do. State law tells us that it cannot start the day by which it can start, the day by which it needs to end. And so when you have parameters on both ends, the start day and the end day, that kind of squeezes you in the middle. Some years have a lot more flexibility than others. So this one has a little more flexibility. This calendar, you'll see it starts on Monday the 24th. And there's, one of the things the board had asked was that there's either a work day or a holiday in each month, just so that every month there's a break. So there is a work day or a holiday, and of course sometimes both, in each month. There is a 2-week winter break, which of course, again, everybody loves. There are the required holidays. Those are from the state. So the ones in blue are holidays. We have to take those days. Sometimes that gets, it feels funny when you're out November 3rd, which is a Tuesday, and then the very next Wednesday you're out. but that November 11th is a required holiday. You will see that there's a week of spring break that occurs after Easter this year, that's right? Yes. Which people tend to like if it occurs after Easter, and this calendar was able to do that. There's one last teacher workday in May. Sometimes that gets a little dicey with other testing, IB, AP testing, but the committee felt like this would work. And then this calendar ends on Friday, June 9th. Crossing my fingers, if we needed to have weather makeup, we could, wouldn't want to. June 10th and 11th, you just have to end school by June 11th.
Wednesday, June 9th.
I'm sorry, Wednesday, June 9th. What did I say? Anyway, Wednesday, June 9th. Questions about this calendar?
Questions? Ms. Mahaffey?
I just have comments and a big thank you to you and the calendar committee that work on this. I know it's not easy trying to put a bunch of different needs into a very tight space. And I do remember the one time we asked you to look at how could we fit that first semester before winter break, and it was a bleak blank space of no work days, no days off. And it was not well received, so.
It's not. It sounds good, but when you try to work it, it just is not conducive, I think, to teaching and learning.
And I just want to echo what Ms. Mahaffey said. I do know, hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't have to do any revisions to these calendars, because I know last year was a lot. It was, and I know we revised the calendar to make the primary work days so buildings could be utilized for elections or polling sites, and then we did the same thing for the November election as well. So I do thank you all for the hard work and listening to all these voices and trying to find the best solution. And so thank you, and to the calendar committee as well, thank you for their input. And are there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
So just a reminder, these are for the 26-27 school year. All right, and so the two different calendars that we shared, the early college calendars were for the 25-26 school year. These are for the 26-27.
And Mr. Caruso, when would you like that feedback to be submitted to you all that folks have?
So we'd like to vote on this at the next meeting, because April 1st is generally a deadline with the state to have the calendars approved. So we'd like to bring this to you at the next board meeting, so in 2 weeks. So if you have any feedback, at any point, probably by the end of next week,
Yes.
would be great.
13th. Would March 13th be enough time?
Yes. Yeah, I
Yes.
think so.
Okay.
That'll work. So anyone has feedback, comments, please make sure you get those.
How you collect that feedback?
You can email me if you'd like, and Mr. Caruso, of course.
That's Thursday, March the 13th.
Yes, that would be good.
Yeah, because we'll have materials need to be submitted on the 14th,
Right.
so we definitely make any adjustments as needed.
Sounds great.
And I want to, in the meeting, just commend my committees, especially the traditional calendar committee. We get a lot of parents, community leaders, school-based staff, central-based staff, a lot of support in our committee. It takes us a long time, and I'll be happy for any of you to join. We typically start September, having these meetings to create the calendars, but I want to commend my committee for really working together and trying to create a calendar that serves instruction first and then the community. So thanks to them.
Thank you for your hard work, because it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Wow. Oh, this was the quickest work session I think we've ever had. I was like, I was looking at the agenda, like, oh, there's another piece. Any comments or questions? So at this point, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11A6 and 115C, 319, Also to consider confidential student information protected under the same GS 115C-402 and the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act 20 USC 132G, and to consult with the attorney employed or retained by the Board of Education to preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318 121A3.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hershey, seconded by Ms. Mahaffey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. We are now in closed session. I'll give the room a minute to clear out.